So I'm going to let you introduce yourself and tell us what school district you're from.
I'm Anita Moreland, and the district we're from is Canyon Independent School District in Amarillo, Texas.
Okay, and we really appreciate you coming forward to tell us what happened. Um, just take this time to just honestly tell us what happened, what went on, and how did you respond to it? How did the school respond?
I went to pick up my 4.5-year-old from preschool at Sundown Lane, like I do every day. We get out of our vehicles and we have to get our child from the teacher. I put him in his car seat that is directly behind my seat in my car. It takes us about 15 to 20 minutes to get to my 9-year-old's school. And it's one of those things, if we go home, we don't have enough time. But when we get to my 9-year-old school, we have too much time. So that's the time I let him have TV. I let him watch a movie in the car. So when I turned around to put the TV down in my car, he had a pill bottle in his hands that were open and there was pills in his lap. So my mama self freaked out, which freaked him out. And I snatched it and I asked him, "Did you take any of these?" And he had told me, "Yes, no, I don't know. Am I in trouble? Am I going to get a shot? I think so. I don't remember." So I put all the pills back in the bottle. I put the lid on and I read in front of the bottle and I said, "Where did you get this?" And he said, "I got it from my backpack." And I read the name on the bottle. I asked him if he knew who the kid was. I assumed it was a kid. And he said, "He's in my class." So my husband was out of town, so I had to wait for my 9-year-old to get in the car, and then I rushed back to Sundown Lane because I needed to know how many pills were in the bottle. And when I got out of the car, in the office was the assistant principal and the nurse. And I looked at the nurse and I said, "I need you to look in your files to see how many pills are supposed to be in this bottle. I need you to call this child's parents and ask them." And I looked at the assistant principal and I had asked her, I said, "You and I need to count these pills." I said, "We need to triple check to make sure these pills are all here." And of course, I was frantic. I was shaking. I emptied the bottle of pills on the countertop in the office. I couldn't slide the pills across the counter because I was shaking so bad. So the assistant principal took over for me. The nurse had walked out of her office, and the assistant principal looked at her and said, "There's 16 pills here." And by this time, I was already on the phone with my pediatrician because I wanted to know what I needed to do if all the pills were not counted for. And the nurse said, "All the pills are there." And my pediatrician said, "Are you sure?" And she said, "Yes, I am sure. All the pills are there. I am pretty sure." And that's when my pediatrician said, "I don't feel comfortable with this situation. So I'm having my patient's mom take him to the ER." So during this time, I left my oldest child and my 4-year-old in the car. I got back in the car. I called my husband because he was on a 2-hour time difference because he was in Colorado, to let him know what was going on. And he said, "You need to call the superintendent right now." So I got off the phone with him. I called the superintendent, and the superintendent's assistant answered and said she kind of needed to know, like, briefing of the situation. I explained it to her. I was on hold for, I want to say, 13 minutes. It was no less than 13 minutes. If anything, it was longer. And she got back on the phone and said the superintendent is aware of this incident. He is extremely busy right now in his office. He could possibly give you a call back tomorrow. And I stopped for a second. I said, he cannot make time for a parent that is taking their child to the ER because of something that happened with one of his schools. And she said, he's aware of the situation. He could possibly give you a call back tomorrow. So I just said, okay, and hung up. By the time I got to the ER, I was taking my 4-year-old out of his car seat. There was 4 other pills that I found in his car seat. At that time, I did not even think anything of it. I just grabbed the pills and I threw them in my cup holder. We went into the ER. I told them what happened. They took us back right away. The doctor came in and he was extremely rude to me, which I appreciated. And a lot of people think it's crazy that I appreciate him being rude because that showed he cared for my child that he did not know. He was mad for my child. And he told me, I'm going to have to report you to CPS. And I told him I understood the steps he needed to take. I get it. My husband and I did the foster to adopt classes before we had children. So I said, okay. So the caseworker came in with him. I told him what had happened. At the end, he apologized to me and said, that nurse at your son's school took an oath when she graduated on graduation day and she got pinned. She took an oath and she's supposed to put your child above her own self. That she had lied to cover her butt against a 4-year-old. And he said, if she didn't lie, then she's not keeping up with her files. Or if she did lie, and let's say she's not a nurse, that she's probably a mother and a grown adult lied to protect herself over. I'm sorry, I get really emotional on this part.
Okay.
That she lied and she decided to cover her butt than protect a 4-year-old. That if he ate more pills than what we think he ate, he told me we could possibly be having another conversation and that I could be crying over my dead baby if I listened to her and went home.
Yeah. Man.
So,
So when you went back to the school, or assuming that you did go back to the school, how did they respond?
so we left really late that night from the hospital and I decided to keep both of my children home because my mama heart needed it the next day and my husband was snowed in Colorado. And my husband and I talked about it and we both decided that Sundown Lane is no longer a safe place for my baby. So him and I both drafted up an email and stated how we feel like Sundown Lane is not a safe place for him, that a school is supposed to be a safe place outside of our home and that they failed him. And I explained to them what the doctor had said to the nurse. I took pictures of the 4 pills that I have in my possession. I had luckily taken a picture of the pill bottle before I gave it back to the school.
Was there ever an
Um,
explanation of where it came from or how it got in the classroom?
yes. So what had happened was the nurse gave it to the teacher. The teacher put it in the wrong backpack. And
Oh my
what the doctor had told me, because the school kept calling it an accident. And every time they told me it was an accident, it made me very angry. So the doctor said, if we want to consider this an accident, fine. But there was 5 steps in between the nurse having the pills and the teacher putting it in my son's backpack that could have prevented this accident. And the first accident was the nurse did not put the cap on right. That the nurse handed the pills to the teacher. So that's 2. 3, the teacher accepted it. 4, the teacher put it in a child's backpack. 5, it was the wrong child's backpack.
Right.
And the doctor actually looked up CISD's handbook on prescription medication, and it's supposed to be transferred from a nurse to a legal guardian. It was never supposed to be put in a backpack ever. So I had
Yeah.
stated that as well in my email with the screenshot of the handbook where it says in the handbook, and I received nothing back.
Mm.
So when I went back to the school to pick up my son's things, the principal had came out, and that was the first time I had spoken to her. She was extremely compassionate, and she kept apologizing. But then the assistant principal came out, and I was sitting on a child's bench in the foyer. And by this time, I'm crying already. And the nurse had, the assistant principal came out, and she looked at me and said, "I bet you have nothing nice to say to me, do you?" And then she said, "I'm really sorry for this accident, but the nurse did not lie about the pills not all being there." And I said, "Yes." She was asked twice if all the pills were there, and she said yes both times. And she said, "No, she didn't." And I said, "That's fine." And she was standing over me, mad at me while I was crying. And I kept asking her, "Can we please stop? It's fine. I get it. It's your word against mine. Can we please stop?" It got so intense that the principal had to ask her to leave. And
Wow.
then the principal wanted to talk about the further education of my 4-year old. And I looked at her and I told her, "I am sorry. I cannot talk about this right now. I don't want to be ugly. I need to leave." And she said, "Okay." And we walked out. Before I entered the school, I did call my child's advocate because he's a sped kid. So we do have an advocate that we go through for his ARDS and stuff. And he suggested that I had recorded our conversation because he said Texas has a one consent state law on recording and that I would be the consent. I had told him I feel like that's really conniving because you see it all over social media. And I said, I don't feel comfortable. He had told me I am vulnerable, I'm exhausted, I'm emotional, my husband's not here to back me up, that anything that is said, it's their word against mine, and that I needed to protect my family. I had called my husband to see how he felt about it because he's super black and white, and I knew he was going to tell me no if I got a hold of him. But he ended up being in a meeting, so I did record it, and I have that recording from that incident. And during that incident, the assistant principal kept telling me, I told the assistant principal, if this prescription would have been a narcotic, things could have ended a lot differently for my child. And she kept telling me, well, it was not a narcotic and
Doesn't
that they
matter.
handle, right, and that they handle narcotics differently. And I told her, you're supposed to be handling all prescription
Yeah.
pills the same way when it comes to school.
Yeah. So after living through this event, and I don't say that lightly because it could have been devastating, and it was, but it could have been like life altering. What would you want to say to your Texas lawmakers?
We hold children accountable when they make mistakes. Why are we not holding adults accountable? Adults that are supposed to be protecting children. You go into the school system knowing that it's your job to make sure these children are safe, but they're not held accountable.
Yeah. And this is exactly why the Texas Ed 911 legislative priorities are so important. Um, we need a parent ombudsman for education. It's something that Texas 911 is asking for so that parents with a situation like this are able to file a complaint directly to the state. And with one phone call, and a mandatory investigation could be opened and would be required. So, right now, the schools don't have any fear of being sued. And so it's like there's no regulation because of sovereign immunity. So, we can't sue them. That needs to change. And Texas Education 911 is working towards that change. So obviously the school did not respect the fundamental rights of the parent. Um, in the situation to be forthcoming, to put the life of the child and the wellness, the well being of the child ahead of their job, which they took an oath, especially nurses, they took an oath to do. Um, so we're advocating for changes to the Texas Constitution and the Texas Education Code. So we really appreciate your bravery and your courage, and thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And for other parents out there, if you have a story to tell, you can email us at texased911@gmail.com. So we're working hard to make things different and to change the system. So thanks again for your time, Anita.
Thank you.